Goblin launch detected.
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you're looking for cards in the US, look no further, as you can use the promo code MTGMUDSTA to get you 5% off anything on the site. Or if you're in Canada like me, you can use the same promo code at Multizone to get 10% off your orders of singles. If cards aren't what you're looking for, Original Magic Art has playmats, tokens, and sweet art that you can use that same promo code to help you get 5% off your order there. If you're looking to bling out your cards, using Alter Sleeves is a great way to do so, and you can click the affiliate link in my About section to help out the channel as you make an order. And if you just want to help out the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month and join the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game is another Jersey Boy special, with Trevor playing Nicol Bolas. He keeps Preordained, Necropotence, Spark Double, Dragonlord Silumgar, Island, Bloodstained Mire, and Port of Carfell. Harry has brought his new Vadrok's Apex of Thunder deck, keeping Cackling Counterpart, Opt, Path to Exile, Sanctum of Eternity, Snow-Covered Mountain, Soul Guide Lantern, and a Snow-Covered Island. Frank is playing Wulfgar of Icewind Dale, keeping Defense of the Heart, Vengeful Ancestor, Birds of Paradise, Wrap in Vigor, Misty Rainforest, Llanowar Elves, and the Great Henge. Ryan has ruled zeroed with the table Brothers Yamazaki and is playing them basically as partners. He keeps a Commander Sphere, Chaos Warp, Chandra Pyromaster, Hanowar Battlements, 2 Snow-Covered Mountains, and a Ghost Quarter. Trevor wins the die roll and starts us off. He plays an island and then casts Preordain. He scries 2, bottoming both and drawing a card. Harry draws, playing a Snow-Covered Island. He casts an Arkham Astrolabe, drawing a card as it comes in and passing. Frank plays a Misty Rainforest, cracking it and shocking himself to go and find a stomping ground, losing a total of 3, and then casts Birds of Paradise. Ryan draws, playing a Snow-Covered Mountain. Trevor plays a Smoldering Marsh, which comes in tapped and passes. Harry casts a Soul Guide Lantern in his main phase, exiling Trevor's Preordain with the Enter the Battlefield trigger. With nothing else, he passes. Frank draws and misses a land drop. He casts Llanowar Elves though, and passes to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Ghost Quarter, passing. Trevor draws and plays a Bloodstained Mire. At the end of his turn, Harry casts Opt, putting 1 to the bottom and drawing a card. Harry draws for turn, and Trevor saves some time by cracking the Bloodstained Mire, losing 1 to go and find a Blood Crypt. Harry plays Sanctum of Eternity, and then suspends an Inevitable Betrayal, and uses the Arkham's Astrolabe to filter into a second blue source, passing turn. Before Frank's turn, Ryan uses Ghost Quarters on Frank's Stomping Ground, making him go and get a mountain as a replacement. Frank then draws and plays a Carplusian Forest, and follows up with Beastmaster Ascension. He swings his Llanowar Elves at Harry for 1, and puts a counter on the Ascension, passing. Ryan just draws and plays a Snow-Covered Mountain. Trevor plays an Underground Sea, and taps 3 black for a Necropotence. He pays 3 into the enchantment to put 3 cards to hand at the end of turn. He then has to discard down to hand size, discarding and then exiling Rhystic Study. Harry ticks down his Inevitable Betrayal and draws. He cracks a Soul Guide Lantern to draw a card, and plays an Exotic Orchard, and then casts an Arcane Signet. With nothing else, he passes to Frank. Frank draws, and pays 1 life into the Carplusian Forest to help cast a Druid's Repository. Frank then swings the Llanowar Elves at Trevor for 1, getting a counter on the Ascension and the Repository, and passing to Ryan. Ryan draws, and plays a Zalfrin Void, scrying 1 and bottoming it. He then casts a Commander Sphere, and passes. Trevor doesn't draw because of Necropotence, and in his main phase plays a land and casts Damnation to wipe away Frank's Mana Dorks. And activates the enchantment's ability, paying 2 life to put 2 cards into his hand at the end of turn. Harry ticks down Inevitable Betrayal again, and draws for turn. He casts his commander, Vadrok's Apex of Thunder, passing to Frank. Frank draws and plays a Hanowar Battlements. He then removes a counter from the Druid's Repository to help him cast a Vengeful Ancestor, passing to Ryan. Ryan draws, and also plays a Hanowar Battlements before casting Solemn Simulacrum. It enters, and goes to grab him a snow-covered mountain, and Ryan passes. Trevor doesn't draw, but does cast a Crux of Fate in his main phase, actually choosing dragons for once to kill Frank's vengeful ancestor. He then plays a Bojuka Bog, and targets Harry, which has Harry responding by mutating a Sea Dasher Octopus, and targets Vadrok. This has Vadrok triggering, and Harry gets to cast Opt from his graveyard before it gets exiled. In his second main phase, Trevor then uses Necropotence, putting 2 life into it to put 2 cards to hand at the end of turn. Harry's inevitable betrayal comes off of Suspend, and he casts it, targeting Trevor. He goes into Trevor's library, grabbing Consecrated Sphinx before drawing for turn. He plays a tap Needle Spires, and attacks Ryan for 3 with his commander. He gets to draw a card from the Sea Dasher Octopus ability, and in his second main phase, plays out a Wayfarer's Bauble and passes to Frank. Frank draws, and Harry draws 2 from the Sphinx. Unfortunately for Frank, he misses another land drop, and has to pass to Ryan. On Ryan's upkeep, he uses Chaos Warp on the Consecrated Sphinx. This has Trevor shuffling it into his library, and he reveals Vampiric Tutor off the top, and Ryan then draws. He plays a snow-covered mountain, and then taps into an Outpost Siege, picking Cons as it enters. Trevor plays a mountain before casting Volcanic Vision, and targeting the Crux of Fate. Harry responds to this by casting Supreme Will, countering it unless Trevor pays 3, which he can't. Trevor then puts 3 life into Necropotence, and puts 3 cards to hand at the end of turn. Harry draws and plays a Wandering Fumarole before moving to combat. He swings his commander at Trevor, who takes the 3, and Harry then draws a card from the Octopus trigger. In his second main phase, we see a Vega the Watcher, and Harry then passes to Frank. Frank draws, misses another land drop, and has to pass to Ryan. Ryan exiles a Tectonic Edge off the Outpost Siege, and then draws for turn. He plays the Tech Edge, and casts both Brothers Yamazaki. Before moving to combat, he swings everything at Harry for 10, which Harry responds to by casting Lightning Bolt on Brother Yamazaki B. Harry then takes 4, 2 of which from one of his commanders, and Ryan passes. Trevor skips his draw once more and plays a Morphic Pool. He then casts a Blasphemous Act to wipe the board. Once that's resolved, Trevor puts 2 life into Necropotence to set aside 2 cards, and Harry cracks his Wayfarer's Bauble on the end step and goes to find a Plains. Harry draws and casts Rutha, Mercurial Artist, passing to Frank. Frank draws, and loses 1 life as he taps a Carplusian Force for a mana to help cast Krosan Grip on Necropotence. With nothing else, he passes to Ryan. Ryan exiles Reliquary Tower to the Siege trigger, and draws. He plays the tower as his land for turn, and follows up with a Chandra Pyromaster. He upticks her, dealing 1 to Harry, before recasting Brother Yamazaki. On Ryan's end step, Trevor casts Vampiric Tutor, losing 2 to go and put a card on top of his library before moving to his turn. Trevor draws for the first time in a long while, and plays a Graven Cairns. He then casts Ugin the Spirit Dragon, down ticking it by 4. Harry responds by casting a Chaos Warp, and targets Ugin, and then activates Rutha to bounce her and copy it, with a copy targeting Beastmaster Ascension. Trevor casts a Pact of Negation on the copy targeting his Ugin, and Ryan cracks his Commander Sphere to draw a card. Frank then shuffles in his enchantment, and flips a Worldly Tutor off the Chaos Warp. Permanents that cost 4 or less with colors get exiled, and with nothing else, Trevor passes turn. Harry draws and recasts Rutha before passing to Frank. Frank draws the Worldly Tutor for turn, and passes to Ryan. Ryan draws, while Trevor tries to bargain with Ryan to not kill Ugin. Ryan decides to cast Valakut Awakening, bottoming 3, and then drawing 4. He casts a Tormod's Crypt, and then Torbran, Thane of Redfell. He decides to grant mercy to Trevor, and passes turn. Trevor pays for his pack trigger on the upkeep, and draws. He plays a Sunken Hollow, and then upticks Ugin, dealing 3 to Harry, before casting Nicol Bolas, Dragon God. With the Dragon God out, he upticks again, this time using Ugin's uptick to deal another 3 to Harry, and then passes turn. Harry draws, and casts a Soul Ring, before mutating Vadrok onto Rutha. The Vadrok trigger lets him cast Lightning Bolt from his graveyard, dealing 3 to the Dragon God. He then moves to combat, swinging 3 more at it. With nothing else, he passes turn, and on Harry's end step, Frank casts that Worldly Tutor, taking 1 from the Carplusian Forest, to go and find Captain Lannery Storm. Frank draws Captain Lannery Storm and casts her, swinging 2 at Ugin and making a treasure token. She connects, and with nothing else, he passes to Ryan. Ryan draws and casts Chandra, Fire Artisan, upticking her to exile Ilharg the Razeboar. Ryan then casts the Boar God and moves to combat. Ryan then swings Torbrand at Ugin to finish him off, and passes to Trevor. Trevor draws and plays a Swamp before casting Niv Mizzet Payroon. He then passes, and at Trevor's end step, Harry casts Path to Exile and targets Niv Mizzet. Trevor draws off of Niv's ability and deals 1 to Harry. Trevor then responds by casting Terminate and targets Harry's Rutha Vadrok hybrid. Harry responds to this by copying his path with Rutha, targeting Niv again, which will let him bounce his Rutha and Vadrok back to hand and save them. This all then resolves, and Trevor then finishes his turn and passes to Harry. Harry draws and casts Serum Visions, drawing a card and scrying 2 to the bottom. He casts an Izzet Signet, and then a Stormkiln Artist, passing turn. Frank draws and swings the Lannery Storm at Trevor for 2. He deals 2 and makes a treasure token. He then uses his mana to cast Tectonic Giant and passes to Ryan. Ryan draws and upticks Chandra, flipping and playing a snow-covered mountain. He then casts Tatsuma the Dragon's Fang and equips it to Ilharg before moving to combat. Ryan swings Ilharg at Frank and Torbrand at Trevor. Frank takes 13 while Trevor takes 4, and with nothing else, Ryan passes turn. Trevor draws and plays a Wandering Fumarole before casting Dragonlord Silumgar. This lets him steal Ryan's Ilharg, and he passes to Harry. Harry draws and recasts Rutha once more before playing an Azara's Chancery and bounces a land as it comes in. He then mutates Vadrok onto Rutha once more, casting Serum Visions from his graveyard and copying it by bouncing Rutha and Vadrok back to his hand. He gets 2 treasures from the Stormkiln Artist trigger, and resolves his 2 Serum Visions, and then moves to his end step, discarding Soul Talisman and a snow-covered mountain. Frank draws and cracks a treasure to cast Valakut's Awakening. He bottoms 5 and then draws 6. Casting a Better Late Than Never Soul Ring and moving to combat. He swings both of his creatures at Chandra for 6, opting to deal 3 to everyone with a Tectonic Giant. Chandra then dies, and Frank takes 8 off of her trigger. With nothing else, he passes turn. On Frank's end step, Ryan casts Skred on Dragonlord Silumgar to get his Ilharg back before he draws. Ryan then plays a Crystal Vein, which he cracks to help cast both of his brothers Yamazaki. Moving to combat, Ryan swings Ilharg at Frank, Torbrand at Harry, and both brothers at Trevor. Trevor flashes in an opposition agent to block Brother A. Unfortunately, Frank isn't so lucky, and he dies while Harry takes 4, and Trevor takes a total of 6. With nothing else, Ryan passes. Trevor draws and casts a God Eternal Kefnet and passes turn. At Trevor's end step, Harry casts Wipe Away, targeting the Tormod's Crypt and making a treasure token before moving to his turn. Harry draws and taps 4 mana, floating some of it before playing a bounce land with the Izzet Boilerworks, and casts a Peregrine Drake to untap his 2 Karoo lands and 3 more lands. Harry then casts a Cackling Counterpart, targeting the Peregrine Drake and making a treasure. Trevor responds to this targeting by sacrificing his Port of Carfell and reanimating the Dragonlord Silumgar. The dragon enters, and steals the Peregrine Drake, fizzling the spell. Harry then mutates Vadrok onto the Stormkiln Artist, casting Inevitable Betrayal, which targets Trevor and makes another treasure token. The Betrayal grabs Torrential Gearhulk, which as it enters, casts Path to Exile from Harry's graveyard, making yet another treasure token. The Path then exiles Silumgar, which gets Harry back his Peregrine Drake. and he then activates Sanctum of Eternity to bounce his Artist/Vadrok stack so that he can mutate Vadrok onto Peregrine Drake. The mutate ability casts Cackling Counterpart, which makes a copy of Peregrine Drake, which also happens to have Vadrok's mutate text on it. This untaps 5 of Harry's lands, including the 2 Karus and the Sanctum of Eternity. At this point, Harry is able to infinitely cast Cackling Counterpart to go mana neutral and keep casting Lightning Bolt an infinite number of times, which will kill the table indefinitely. Game review time. So it was kinda cool to see this Rule 0 in action, since the brothers Yamazaki do make a lot of sense to have partner with. Because it was okay with the table, everyone had a good time, even if it meant bending the rules a little bit. I'm sure Frank wishes he could have bent the rules a little bit though, by getting himself some extra lands early on, since he really wasn't able to do very much after the Ugin wiped away the Druid's repository. As much as I love mana dorks, they're not really a replacement for lands, and as we saw, once he lost them, he was really far behind. Harry's Vadrok deck shows just why I love Mutate and how wonky it is with clone effects. I probably should put Cackling Counterpart into my Ramos deck, because it seemed like he was able to do a lot of really cool stuff depending on what card was on the front and what card was underneath. I should probably elaborate a little bit further on Harry's combo, since it wasn't as clear as I thought it would be. What happened was the Peregrine Drake token copy that came in had Vadrok's ability, which Harry then was able to mutate onto with Vadrok, meaning he got 2 Vadrok triggers. This let him cast Lightning Bolt, plus cast the Cackling Counterpart again to make another Peregrine Drake, with 2 Vadrok abilities this time around. He could then untap a bunch of lands, one of which was the Sanctum of Eternity, which he would then activate to bounce the token copy that had Vadrok to his hand, returning Vadrok to hand and untapping enough mana to recast Vadrok onto the new token that now had 2 instances of Vadrok's ability on it, continuing to do this over and over and over again by casting Lightning Bolt with the extra triggers to kill everyone. It seemed like most of the game Trevor had to play Fun Police, and he had to resolve 3 board wipes, not to mention use a 4th that was unfortunately countered, to try and control the board. Unfortunately what that meant though, was that all he was doing most of the game was playing a land and then playing an answer. It did seem like he actually got a bit more of a board presence once he had Ugin out, but unfortunately everyone gangs up on you when you control Planeswalkers. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.